alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. From Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's fadl, we are all gathered here for the sake of Allah to reflect on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's beautiful names. And subhanAllah, whenever I think about this series and I think about just whatever I'm personally dealing with, I always think, subhanAllah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has truly blessed us all with this knowledge, because there is no way we can go through any situation in life without the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's not only in terms of like the difficult times, but we're also talking about in moments of happiness, right? You, at the end of the day, cannot go through that moment of happiness without acknowledging that this is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And subhanAllah, it just only shows that the only way we can remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in these moments is if we truly get to know Him. And just like when you interact with any individual, what is the best way to get to know someone? First, you find out who they are, what their names are. You get to know a little bit more about their background, where they're from. So like, when we have someone new come in, that's the first question, right? Like, oh, are you new here? Where did where were you living before? Get to know more about their just hobbies, what they're up to, what work they do. So what are you doing in those moments? You're inquiring, essentially, right? You're trying to get more information about them and as they are about you. Now, of course, there's no example greater than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's example. And if we had to go ahead and just reflect that, wait a second, how will I get to know more about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? It's through finding out who He is, what His background is, right? What are His characteristics and attributes and personality, the traits in itself that makes Allah, Allah, right? Not just that, oh, I just have to worship Allah because I'm a Muslim, because I say La ilaha illallah. No, it's deeper than that. So subhanAllah, this series that we have been going through for the past, like I would say 4 or 5 months, right? And we've been covering so far, we've only covered one name of Allah, Ar-Rabb, and gone through so many sessions on that. And now we're on Al-Qadir, Al-Qadir, Al-Muqtadir. And we're going to go into, inshallah, what those names mean. But it all comes down to the reason why we should be taking our time in understanding the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is because that's the only way we will truly feel it in our hearts. That's the only way we will be able to internalize it, right? When you want to connect with someone, what is the best way? Do you just meet them once and be like, oh, hey, okay, well, I'll see you when I see you? The way to connect with them is how? To make it a point to meet them often, right? Like to say that, okay, hey, we're gonna meet every other week, right? The more, even when I see the sisters, right? I bond with you all because I see you consistently. If I see you just like every now and then, it's like, oh, there's been a gap of me not being able to see you. And then I find out like, oh, wow, it's been a while. What's been going on? But then the bond increases the more time you spend with someone. So even when it comes to the names of Allah, a lot of the times the question is, wait, why don't we just go through all 99 names? And that's, hey, that works for, some teachers as well. And that may work as, that's a part of studying the names of Allah. But this way, the way we're going about it, inshallah, it's a reminder that this is for us to internalize who Allah is and really truly feel that bond and that connection. So when we're talking about what is a beautiful life, because that is exactly what the series is called, the beautiful life, as always, I give the introduction that this dunya, when we look at it, it is truly, truly something that is so fleeting, right? It's like 1 minute it's something, the next minute it's something else. 1 minute you're super happy, you're celebrating your accomplishments and achievements, relationships are super strong, and then the next minute it just feels like everything is crumbling. It feels like there's a stressor. It feels like you don't know how to move forward. So now, the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we have been discussing over, well, actually we just started, I realized we just started, which is Al-Qadir, Al-Qadir, Al-Muqtadir. And subhanAllah, these three names, of course, it has one, you can say like one similar verb to it, which is qadr, right? Qadr, or also known as qudra. So qaf, dal, ra, which is the same in each of these. What does this signify? What does it mean? So last week we went into the definition of what qadr means. Obviously, we know that when we think of qadr, we think of decree. But that's one definition. Let's go into another definition that maybe we have forgotten or have heard, or maybe have just like brushed over it, which is the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the power and the ability. Power and ability. And these are two separate characteristics. You can have the ability to do something. Think about it. I have the ability to go ahead and move this table, right? Like the table that's over there. But do I have that power right now to go ahead and move it by myself? The answer is no. I have the ability to. I know like that is something that I can do, but I don't have the strength right now to do it. When we talk about the ability, we're talking about the capacity that we have or the understanding to do something. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us the ability to do something, but not always we have the power to do it, right? Say, for example, another, like you want to go ahead and help someone. You have the ability, right, to go ahead and help someone, maybe like teach someone something, right? But then not always do you have the power to do that. Maybe you have other circumstances in front of you that are preventing you from going ahead and teaching someone. You may not have a car, for example. Maybe your body is in a position that you cannot go ahead and go to an institute and teach, for example, right? So power and ability are two separate things, but yet with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they go hand in hand. When we say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the ability to do something, always remember that means the ability goes hand in hand with the power. Does that make sense to everyone, right? Whereas for us, we may have the ability, and honestly, not all the time we have the ability, but we may have the ability, but we may not always have the power to be able to do that. So when we talk about Al-Qadir, Al-Qadir, Al-Muqtadir, what is it that we are showing? It's the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the power and ability to do what? To do anything, literally anything. He has the power and ability to plan. Plan meaning anything that we're planning for, it's us keeping it at the back of our minds that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also has a plan for us. And that is better for us than we know. We're busy planning out our days. We're busy planning out, okay, this is how it's going to be. This is what I'm going to do. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's plan is so much better. And He knows better than we know ourselves. So that's number one, the fact that He plans. But He doesn't just plan and then sit back. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala writes it down. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has that power and ability to write it down. And that goes into the qadr and the decree of our taqdeer, essentially. And then the third being the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is aware, that has the knowledge at the end of the day. So when we think of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being Al-Qadir, Al-Qadir, Al-Muqtadir, always think of the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the power and the ability. Now, today, inshallah, we're going to go into specifically how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, number one, we already know that His power and ability is perfect. And that's something that we always have to keep in mind. Because when we think of Allah, it's important to always attribute it to no. Allah is perfect. So every plan of His is perfect. It's me, that there is some flaw in my planning. And that's not in terms of like, oh, for us to look down on ourselves, that, oh, I didn't plan the way I should have. No, instead it is showing us that we are weak and we need Allah. And we cannot do anything without Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's help. So even when it comes to, subhanAllah, us coming to the masjid, us interacting with each other, this is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's power and ability that has brought us together, subhanAllah. So when we talk about power and ability, always attribute it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's perfection. Now, today, inshallah, we're going to go into a little bit more about taqdeer, which is decree. And subhanAllah, it's so fitting in a way because we know that obviously Ramadan is not too far away, right? It's literally not this upcoming Tuesday, but the following Tuesday night will be the first Tarawih prayer. And then we know that once Ramadan hits, before you know it, the last 10 nights are going to come. And then the last 10 nights, we talk about Laylatul Qadr. We talk about the decree that is written for us on those odd nights. There's the one odd night in specific, right, that we are unaware of. What do we do then? So when we talk about our decree, it's important to know that even though in that moment it is written down, but already everything has been planned by Allah. Everything has written by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on what's to happen in the upcoming year. What changes are going to take place? Who you are going to interact with? Where are you going to live? If you had to just take a step back right now and reflect on where you were a year ago and how life has changed since then, you will honestly be in awe. And you will know that this was not my planning. I did not expect to be in this position. I did not expect to be here in this very moment or to be friends with certain people that I didn't know a year ago. I know that if I look around this room, honestly, 1 year ago, more than half of you all, honestly, all of you all, except for one, I didn't know any of you all, literally a year ago, subhanAllah. And for some, subhanAllah, how bonds have grown since then, just within these past few months. Some through Umrah trips, some through sister socials of elevation. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has brought us all together in such a beautiful manner. And yet we would never have been able to imagine this. This is what we call the taqdeer. This is what we call the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this was just a small example that I gave. Think about other things in your life. Reflect on that. List that out. Think about that tonight, inshallah. That, wow, like this is not me. So always remember that nothing, literally nothing is a coincidence. Nothing is random. It didn't just randomly happen. It didn't just like, oh yeah, one day I saw this event that was taking place, so I decided to come here. Who put that thought in your mind? Who put it on like maybe on your social media page? Who gave you that tawfiq and understanding to go ahead and push yourself? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Because remember, what did we say? That power and ability is from Allah. And always attribute that when we're talking about the qadr of Allah and our taqdeer, our decree, it's Allah that has that power and ability to have it all written down. So anything that happens, and so I gave examples of positive experiences. What about experiences that are they're negative, they're hurtful, they're painful? What about those? Is that decreed from Allah? Absolutely. Absolutely, it's decreed from Allah. But not in the sense for us to feel where we start pulling away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or why Allah did that happen, but more so of the opposite, our negative experiences. And we talked about this, subhanAllah, in the previous name of Allah, which was Ar-Rabb, and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala nurtures us and helps us grow through negative experiences. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will only help us grow when you are basically being tested. Because when things are going smooth and you are doing well, you're taking a back seat. You're relaxed. You're on the edge when you're like, okay, what's going to happen next? So the fact that Allah's nurturing is written for us as well, it's because at the end of the day, Allah knows us better than we know ourselves. So always remember that nothing is a coincidence. Nothing is random. Who you say salam to downstairs, smile at them, you don't know the impact that it has, right? Even what we do outside of the Islamic environment or what we're exposed to, you never know. So that's number one, that when we're talking about Allah's decree, it's always a reminder for us, this isn't a coincidence. There's a reason behind it. Number two, and this one we talked about a little bit about it last week as well, which is the fact that when we're talking about the taqdeer, when we're talking about the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it is essential for us to remember that, wait a second, this is a pillar of my faith. What do I mean by pillar of my faith? It means that it is so important that without it, my faith will be shaky. That if I don't have a stronger understanding, not that it's completely where I understand everything about it, there will be moments where you are going to question. But when I say pillar, it means that you know that no, there is a reason behind why this happened. There is a reason behind this heartache. There is a reason behind these tears. There is a reason behind why I can truly feel that suffering. There is a reason why for every single thing. So when we say that it's a pillar of our faith, it's so interesting for us to always tie it back to the first pillar of our faith, which is belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because if you are submitting yourself to the decree of Allah or the taqdeer of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you have given all control to Allah. You have basically said, Allah, I am truly just a passenger here. You are the true driver in my life. You are the one that is going to take me and lead me and guide me and be my GPS, inshallah, in this dunya. I know I'm bringing up car references because I literally drove 4 hours. So please forgive me. That's literally what I was thinking about. But really, think about it. SubhanAllah. This is where we reflect that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at the end of the day has that full control that I don't have. And honestly, I always like to think about, like, especially us as women, in whatever role we're in, right? I think about myself as a mother. I think about myself as a daughter, being the eldest as well, that sometimes we want to go ahead and control certain things, or like basically, in a way, the situations that are coming, be able to be like, okay, wait, I'll take care of this. I'll be able to handle this. But the reality is that we, no matter how hard we try, we will not be able to fully take control of that, because we have to acknowledge that, no, Allah, with your help, I'm going to do my best to go ahead and take lead, because that's the role that Allah has given us to be in. But at the same time, for us to be fixated on that, which then inevitably, what ends up happening? Internally, you're now frustrated. There are moments where you feel like everything is crumbling away, everything is slipping away. Because of what? You feel like I don't have control of the situation. And so this is what we have to reflect on. That no, this is my pillar of my iman. Pillar, and I want you to think about actual pillars. I don't think we really have pillars here, but think of like the pillars that you would see. It's what's holding up our faith, essentially. And that ties into the belief of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's existence. So knowing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His decree in itself is a pillar, you will now look at every action of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through like your own eyes, essentially. And what I mean by that is, think about us when we're blinking, right? And I know like when we were younger, I don't know if we still do this, but like, you know, when you play I know my kids do this, the staring competition, the staring contest, right? Which is essentially that you can't blink. And if you blink, you're out. So think about it. If we kept our eyes open without blinking, what would happen? What would happen? Our eyes would dry out. You start like your eyes start watering because it needs to blink. Try it, even for like 10, 15 seconds. You cannot. It's actually painful. That simple action, do we think about it? That is the power of Allah. That's not our power because we do it without even realizing it. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because of His qudra, and it's written down, you're going to blink. You are breathing. You are moving. Now, blinking is a small example, and now take it to another, to every action. You are walking. You are praying. So all of this is from the qudra of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So much so that, and what the example that I gave is what actually the scholar Ibn Abbas radiallahu an, he mentioned this, that even when you place your hand under your chin, for example, there's no reason behind it. This is just a voluntary move, essentially, right? But this is also the power of Allah, where we're moving. So if you can't imagine this, then tell yourself, and this is what Ibn Abbas said, if you can't imagine Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala having that power, then remember this ayah. تَبَارَكَ الَّذِي بِيَدِهِ الْمُلْكُ وَهُوَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ. We recite this, Surah Al-Mulk. This is the first ayah in Surah Al-Mulk, and we recite this when? Before going to bed. What are you, with this first ayah, what are you saying? You're saying Tabarak, blessed, Mubarak, right? From Barakah. Tabarak alladhi biyadihi al-mulk. That in the hands of the one who has the kingdom. Who has the kingdom? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That blessed is the hands of those who has the entire kingdom. وَهُوَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has literally the qadir, or the power over kulli shay, everything. And everything being, like again, when we're talking about the whole kingdom, we're talking about not just this earth, right? We're talking about galaxies and universe, like things that we have no knowledge about. And on top of that, Allah is saying that I have control kulli shay'in qadir, of every single thing. So you look at a small bit and know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has that power and ability. So even when there are moments that you feel tired, you feel like you can't do something, you don't have that energy anymore, remember this name of Allah, Ya Allah. You are Al-Qadir, you are Al-Qadir. You are the one that has the power and ability, give me that power and ability to do this and this act, right? To do this and this, whatever it may be, because that is how we are now connecting everything that we do to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's how your life then becomes so beautiful, because you're reflecting. You're not just saying that, oh, it's because I did this. And that's, again, when you're going through this and you're thinking that, no, this is Allah, what is the, you can say like the phrase essentially, or the statement that revolves around all these names? It's La ilaha illallah. When we say La ilaha illallah, what does that mean? We say it by our tongues, but are we internalizing that La ilaha illallah means that there is no God but Allah? It means that there is no one that has the power and ability to do anything except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That no one has that control the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has control. So when you think of it in that sense, what do? You are now magnifying Allah. You are elevating Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's so interesting because in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there's a verse, and it's one of my, I wouldn't call it my favorite verse, but in the sense that it is a verse that really, really makes me think and be reflective over. And that ayah is, مَا قَدْرُ اللَّهَ حَقَّ قَدْرِهِ. Notice qadr over here too. مَا قَدْرُ اللَّهَ حَقَّ قَدْرِهِ. What does that mean? It means that we do not give Allah the qadr, the value that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the haqq that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala deserves. That's the reality. That's our reality, that we do not give Allah that power, and we do not give Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that recognition that He truly deserves. And that's on us, and not for us to feel like, oh, I forget it, like then why bother doing it to begin with? But instead, taking it that, okay, I do not give Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the haqq that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala deserves, so I'm going to try. I'm going to work on it. I'm going to get to know Him more. I'm going to praise Him more. I'm going to acknowledge Him more. Right? So this goes into our day-to-day life. Now, when we go into understanding and grasping the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we need to think about our day-to-day life in terms of what takes place. Because I'm not talking about just, when something happens to us. I'm talking specifically, let's go into when we plan something. When we plan anything, because again, as women, I do strongly believe we are very much known to be planners. Even when, subhanAllah, when I'm in a meeting with our mashayikh at the masjid, and immediately, and the shuyukh can attest to this, and they always say it, immediately they look at me and they're like, okay, you have our count. Like everyone knows that I'm always reminding all our shuyukh that, oh wait, we've got this program, we've got this, we can't do this at that time. It's like understood. It's because how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has truly given us this ability that in all honesty, some men, or majority of them, would not be able to plan in such a way. It would take them a little bit more time. So when we think about ourselves, and when we think about that, okay, we got to plan things out. We have to prioritize. Otherwise, it's not going to go accordingly. Okay, if that's the case, now we look at our day-to-day and we start to plan. We estimate, okay, this is what's going to happen, right? And then after that, what do? We start executing that plan. And something does not go the way we thought it would. Generally, our reaction is what? What is our reaction when things don't go the way we had anticipated? What are we feeling in those moments? Okay, frustration. What else? Stressed. What else? Disappointment. Okay. Huh? Anger. Okay, perfect. Yes, that's what I was thinking. And for me, overwhelmed, and then I start crying. Like when I get overwhelmed, I'm like, and I see sisters are nodding their head because that's true. We get so overwhelmed, we're like, you know what? We're done. Right? So disappointment, frustration, anger, overwhelmed, agitated. Then you don't want to interact with anyone because you're just like, you know what? Just please leave me alone. We start isolating ourselves. We're like, okay, I can handle it. I can take care of it. Right? That's when things don't go the way we planned. But now imagine, sure, again, your initial reaction is definitely going to be like, oh my gosh, like I feel like things are going out of control. Now, this is where we need to start working on what? Transitioning those emotions, because those emotions are going to come. But now it's like, wait, since it's coming, I'm going to pause. And now I'm going to reflect and be like, no, but this was qadarullah wa ma sha fa'al. That this was the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and every action is from Allah's will. And when you say that, it's not just you saying it verbally, right? Because you hear that, oh, qadarullah, it happened. Qadarullah, inshallah khair. But truly internalize it. Internalize that, no, this is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has that power and the ability. And clearly something that was out of my control, and the emotions that I'm attached to this, I'm now going to detach myself that no, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has that power. And this is from Allah. It is written. So when you take that emotion, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to what? He is now going to make that situation, make it feel like, you know what? I'm just going to go with the flow. I'm just going to see how it comes, and based off of that, I'm going to accept it. And then with that acceptance will then come the contentment. So when you accept something that has now taken place, even though it is out of your control, what is going to happen? Then you're going to feel that sense of contentment. Contentment doesn't come right away. But you've now accepted that, okay, this is what's to happen. This is what I experienced. And now you feel like, wait a second, but Allah has me. Allah is Al-Qadir, He is Al-Qadir, He's Al-Muqtadir, and He would not want something that is bad for me. He would never want something that is bad for me. Even though for me, I don't understand why this is happening. And so because of that, now you feel contentment in your heart. You feel a sense of where you were feeling overwhelmed, you now feel a sense of ease. We're going to wait for the adhan, inshallah. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة
حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
All right. So I'm going to go ahead and end off with this particular hadith before we go into the recap, inshallah. And then, of course, we're going to go offline for reflections. But I want to share this hadith because this hadith in itself is so powerful in terms of our qadr of Allah, the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, the first thing that Allah created was what? The pen. The first thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created was the pen. And He, Allah, said to the pen, write. Just like, you know how Jibreel alayhi salam, when he came to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam the first time, what did he say? Read, right? Iqra. Now here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told the pen, write. Now in our minds, this sounds strange because you're telling a pen to write, right? Which doesn't make sense. But again, Allah has the power and ability and control over everything. So Allah has control over the pen. So Allah told the pen to write, and the pen asked, what should I write, Ya Rab? What should I write? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, write what was decreed about everything and everyone until the last hour. Hatta taquma sa'a. Until that last hour, I want you to write everything. Now, for our minds, it's hard to really conceptualize that fact that there is a pen that has written everything from the beginning of time before anything else was created until the last hour. That, in our mind, is like, that's not, how's that possible? But then remember what we had said. What is the name of Allah? What are the names of Allah when we say Al-Qadir, Al-Qadir, Al-Muqtadir? We're talking about power and ability to do anything and everything. So His knowledge, we cannot understand it. We will never be able to comprehend Allah's knowledge. But at the end of the day, Allah has planned, He has written, and He has the knowledge that we are unaware of. So when it comes to think about it now, life's decisions, big choices in life that are decisions that need to happen. Say, for example, you are deciding, should I move to a new city? Is that what's good for me? Or should I take this job? Should I accept this proposal? Should I go ahead and, take this, initiative when it comes to this experience, this volunteering experience? Should I go ahead and go to this particular event? I want you to remember that with everything, regardless, it has been written down for you. But does that mean that you just kind of take a step back and just wait for it to happen? No. You take the steps and the means that you need to, but at the same time, you are now going to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because you know that the one who has the entire knowledge of everything is Allah. So imagine, think about it. If you went to a teacher, right? You go to a teacher and ask questions and go to them for help. Why? Because you know that they have knowledge that you do not have. You go to a person and ask them questions or ask them for guidance because you strongly believe that they have some sort of insight, some sort of understanding that you don't have. So you're going to go to them. And you are at ease knowing that you're going to them, you researched about them, you got to know more about them. So your heart is at ease knowing that, okay, I'm going to talk to this person and they're going to give me the right advice. You're not going to go to someone just random, right? You're going to go to someone that you feel like, hey, I feel comfortable enough to speak to you about this. Now, there's no example greater than the example of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what about Allah? That are we going to Allah in these moments? Or are we only saying that, oh Allah, like, I just want this to happen. And you don't even know if that's right for you. You've just assumed that this is what's right for you. So think about this, inshallah. Think about the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the ability that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has, that knowledge that He has, and the fact that when we talk about Allah's the taqdeer that has been written for us, it's the fact that Allah has that knowledge that we are unaware of. And the fact that it should give us a sense of contentment that what's to happen will happen. And when something does, when it's like an obstacle that takes place, I am going to accept it. And that acceptance is going to lead into my contentment. Even if my initial reaction is frustration, even if my initial reaction is where I feel overwhelmed and anxious and feel like I don't have that power. Because sometimes we are also fixated that, oh, I need to initially react in like a calm manner. We're humans. So that's not always going to be the case. We might kind of freak out a bit. But then it's how we go about it throughout that process, inshallah. So with that, inshallah, we're going to end here. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept from each and every one of us. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to implement this beautiful knowledge of His beautiful names in our lives and be able to apply it in every moment. That when we are blinking, we are able to recognize that this blink is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive us for our shortcomings and allow us to reach Ramadan. Allahumma ameen ya rabbil alameen. Jazakumullahu khair. Subhanak Allahumma wa bihamdik. Nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant. Nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Inshallah.